Throughout the entire offseason, Washington Wizards general manager Will Dawkins has preached that the team will have a defensive identity. They will compete. It'll be a meritocracy. And so far, through 2 preseason games, I think the defense has been impressive. Let's break it down fully here with Bullets Forever's Greg Finberg.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, you are locked on to the Washington Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe and join the DC family. Alongside DC Sports content creating Strober and Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober, and I cover all things DC Sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. And joining us today, our good friend from Bullets Forever and the host of the Wizards podcast, Greg Finberg. Greg, good to have Wizards basketball back. I know you've been tapped into the first 2 preseason games just as we have. So how's it felt to finally see some basketball once again?
Well, yeah, thanks for a good introduction, Ben. Good to be here with you and AB as well. It's nice to be back. I mean, I haven't seen Wizards basketball since April. I watched a lot of the playoffs and a lot of NFL football before that, some college too, but it's nice to kind of see the Wizards back on the floor. Obviously, I have a lot of thoughts on kind of what went down in those 2 games. And you don't want to read too much into preseason, but you get a little too excited because you haven't seen a lot of basketball in so long. I feel like for you guys too, it's been the off season. You're just kind of trying to find a lot of stuff to talk about, and now it's kind of presenting itself to you on the court. So you got to kind of tote the line of being excited about it, but also obviously understanding it's preseason, small sample size. So definitely excited they're back and excited to talk about it with you guys.
Absolutely. Real quickly remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. A lot to get to today. I want to tap into this defensive tenacity we've seen from this Washington Wizards team through the first 2 preseason games. What's that looked like? And maybe specifically get into Cam Whitmore and what we've seen from him on the defensive side, because that was a big question mark after the acquisition. We'll touch a little bit about Alex Sar's performance in game number 1. Obviously did not play in the second game, was a healthy scratch for that one. And then we'll just continue the conversation, get some other observations about what this final roster might look like when the season finally does get here, just a week away from the time that we are recording this when the Wizards open their season at Milwaukee. All right, so through the first 2 games, Greg, we have noticed that the effort defensively has been pretty tenacious from this Wizards team, to say the least. And obviously a team that was bottom 3 defensively for the past 2 seasons, a big issue. You could hear in the voice of Will Dawkins at his press conference that they really wanted to be a lot more competitive this year, especially on the defensive side of the basketball. And I know it's the preseason. Obviously, the Knicks sat pretty much everybody yesterday, so you're not getting the same look you would in a regular season game. But in terms of the effort, what have you made of what the Wizards have shown so far?
I like the effort. Obviously, it's one thing to try hard versus actually produce on the defensive end. But I think in the NBA, a lot of being a good defender is IQ, knowing where to be, but it's also effort. Lou Dort is one of the best defenders in the league because he doesn't stop. He plays the entire game. That's his identity. You obviously have players not even trying to catch straight, but like Jordan Poole last year, he's not really known as a defender, and he's not necessarily going for it all on that end. He makes his money on the other end versus a guy like Dort that makes his money on the defensive end. So for the Wizards, I'm kind of not looking to see like, are they giving up less points per game, or how's the defensive rating looking? Because I don't think they have many great individual defenders on the team right now. I'm kind of looking to see what that buy-in is like, what that effort is like. Are guys in the right spots? Are they really learning, the defensive schemes and kind of, okay, I should be here to take this charge, or I should rotate this way. That's more so what I'm looking at, because the last 2 years, obviously, the defense hasn't been great. I don't think that's Brian Keefe's fault. I think apart from Alex Sar last year, how many good defenders are on this team? You got Bilal, Keyshawn George. They're really good on the perimeter. But you don't have too many guys, especially from last year's team, that I was like, okay, like they hang their hat on the defensive end. And I can feel confident if the game's on the line, putting them in the lineup. So I've liked the effort that I've seen. I've liked the buy-in that I've seen, and you're going to see that early in the season. You're going to see it in training camp because these guys are fresh and they're eager to play. If that can sustain throughout the rest of the season, that's what I'll obviously be looking for beyond preseason and beyond playing against second and third and fourth string guys. Is that effort there? Are guys in the right spots? And they might give up a lot of points per game, but am I seeing, improvement from that defensive unit? That's kind of what I'm looking for. Because again, I don't expect this defense to be top 10, top 15, top 20 this year, even. Because again, I just don't see the individual defenders that can make that happen.
Yeah, and we saw in the first two preseason games, the first one against Toronto, Scotty Barnes was getting his. I mean, that's typical Wizards defense right there that we've seen in the past. And Emmanuel quickly in transition, getting those threes off. And the one thing I loved about the New York game, at least, was I understand they didn't have their core players, we didn't have our core players, but they were playing fast, Greg. So do you think this team, defensively, obviously, they're not going to be as great, like you mentioned, we're not going to expect top 20. We're hoping at least. Do you think them being a fast team and playing on off the fast break is going to somewhat hide that fact that this team's not that good defensively?
I mean, I think they're going to try to. Brian Keefe said that when he was interim head coach. He said it before last season. He's saying it now. The team's going to try to run. And you see it a lot with younger teams that have all of these rookies and all of these second and third year guys. They're playing against veteran teams and they want to use that speed, that youth to their advantage. And I think the best way possible is to run, to get on the break, especially because the team's half court offense isn't the best. You got a young point guard in Bub Carrington that has struggled. He had a really bad first game, minus 34, 0 of 8 from the field. But then he had a good second game against New York, 8 points, made both his threes, 4 assists. So you have a young point guard trying to run your half-court offense. And early on, I think he'll probably struggle. And so I think the team would just benefit from avoiding that. Try to get as many easy buckets as possible. And so I think that's what they'll do. Now, to your question about will that impact them defensively? I think if they can do that and make sure they get back, they get set and play good team defense, anything is possible. Like they could very well be a top 15 defense. It depends what kind of steps is Alex Sar going to take as a rim protector. Can he actually defend bigs in the paint, versus getting bullied like he did last year? You saw a lot of good things from Cam Whitmore as well as a guy that can come in and play physically. He had a really emphatic block against Toronto, had a steal against New York. I've seen the anticipation that he has. I think he kind of has a knack for it. He's also a big dude, so I think I'd feel comfortable placing him on a 4 as well, even as a small ball 5. Maybe Keith will experiment with that. So I think they'll definitely try to run on the break. I don't know if that's necessarily going to translate into a top 15, 20 defense. But again, the easier the buckets they can get, the better and the more competitive they can be.
You kind of segued it perfectly because I wanted to get into Cam Whitmore. And obviously the effort has been there for him defensively and, for a good reason, because the biggest question mark that this organization really faces making this move to get him is what can he provide to the defensive side of the basketball. And with you kind of already breaking down what he has done so far, what have you made of his offensive game through the first 2 preseason games?
I've liked it. I like that he hasn't seemed to be forcing anything or pressing like I think a lot of people might do on a new team in preseason, trying to get reps. He's come off the bench in both games. It seems like just reading into it a little, maybe too much from that first game, that he'll be a part of Keefe's 9-man rotation, at least to begin the season, while Bilal Coulibaly recovers from his injury. Against the Knicks last night, 7 points on 3 of 4 from the field in just 10 minutes. The other night, I think he shot 4 of 7 from the field. He's knocked down a 3. I like the range that he showed. I've liked the aggression that he's shown. I like the defense above all else, like I mentioned. I just hope that he plays into a role that I guess suits the team. Like I hope he doesn't come in here pressing and saying, I got to prove everybody wrong. I got to go get my own. Because I think when I see him play with the team, when I see him play to his size and go into paint instead of settling for outside jumpers, that's when he's at his best. There's not many people at his size that can run the floor as fast as he can. We saw it, I think, against the Knicks and certainly against the Raptors. When he's in the open court, he's tough to stop. The Wizards player said it. You guys were at media day, but they talked about how nobody's going to get in front of that guy when he's running down the court. It's not going to happen. And so I think for Whitmore, I like what I see defensively. I just hope that he plays in control, and I hope that he plays to his size because I think that's when he's at his best.
And Greg, do you think towards the end of the season there's a possibility that we could say Cam Whitmore is the best player on this young Wizards roster?
No, I mean, like, it would be great if that's the case because I mean, he had a really breakout season. It's also, he's in the same year as Koulibaly, entering his third season. And Bilal is also entering that point where it's like, the potential is one thing, and it's great to like envision that you could be this good. But at a certain point, with a contract extension looming next October, you got to show something. And I think it's tough for Whitmore because he hasn't had the reps and the minutes that Bilal has had, buried on that bench in Houston. But I think for those guys, they're the veteran guys of this younger group. As crazy as that is to say, the Wizards have so many young players who are in their first and second years, and they have McCollum, they have Middleton. But if you're talking about young guys, they are the more mature, more experienced group. So I think if anybody's going to emerge as the best player of the young group, it would be one of those third-year guys in Bilal or in Whitmore. So I don't think it would be crazy to say that he's at that level. But I am very excited about Alex Sar, and I see that we're going to talk about that in a second. But I would be I wouldn't say shocked, but I'm surprised if I leave the season saying, Whitmore completely outplayed Sarr and he's the best player on this young group on the team. But if that's the case, that's great. I think Whitmore has the tools. I liked him coming out of Villanova. It just, can he put his physical traits, his motor, his shot, can he put it all together? And if he can, then he's going to be terrific. But I guess we'll see.
Well said. And I think the fact that you bring up Alex Sar and how you'd kind of want him to be your top guy realistically in terms of the young players by season's end, I completely agree with that. Let's break down Alex Sar because he had a nice showing in game number 1. Didn't play in the second one, but let's talk about it. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether 401k properties or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending, and you'll finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. One thing that surprised me about when I got Monarch is that I was able to identify I was not saving as much money as I'd thought. Monarch helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from your past jobs. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real. Getting tickets is a total headache sometimes between waiting in the queues or surprising fees, prices that jump right before checkout. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer for your Wizards. That's where Gametime comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring an amazing NBA ticket deal fast and stress-free. I recently used Gametime to grab seats for the local Wizards game, and it couldn't have been simpler. I had great seats in minutes. I was able to give those off to my family because obviously I was there credentialed. But it made it really easy to go to that preseason game back on Sunday. I love that you get to see before you pay. There's no hidden fees at checkouts. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Gametime. Let's get right into it. Alex Sar, just 17 minutes played in the opening preseason game on Sunday. He looked efficient, he looked physical, and quite different than we had seen at times in year number 1 for Alex Sar. Greg, if he can sustain that level of play in terms of physicality over the course of an 82-game season, how much better or how much would our outlook change of him as an offensive player look by the end of this year?
I think, and I talked about this a little bit, but I think the best thing that I saw from him was the shot diet. Like, I like the physicality. He had a play where he just took it into Sandro Mamukashvili like he wasn't there, and he's a big dude. Finished over top with a nice layup. I like the aggression there, and I like that he took 5 shots in what'd you say, 17 minutes he played. He made 4 of them. He only took 1 3, and I feel like if we were last year's preseason, taking 5 shots, 2 or 3 are probably jumpers, and you didn't really see that from him. He was aggressive. He played like he was a 7-footer and not like he was a 6'3" shooting guard. And that's kind of what I like the most. And if he can keep that up, it obviously changes the trajectory of this season. It changes what the Wizards will look to do. And obviously, you had the center depth questions all throughout the offseason. You had is Bagley a good enough backup? Will Tristan play a lot? And they've been the best group by far throughout the preseason. So if you're looking at Sarr, if he's this type of aggressive, he limits the amount of threes. And again, the threes are fine. Like if you're 7 foot and you can knock down an outside shot, it changes the way that teams have to defend you and your team. Draws opposing centers or rim protectors out of the paint, opens up driving lanes. It just makes everything easier. So I'm not telling Alex to stop shooting threes. It was just the amount last year. It was just so many, and so it was a settle at times because teams would leave him there. I remember his game against Jokic and the Nuggets, like he made some threes, but he was aggressive. He realized at an early point, like this guy isn't that good at defense, and I'm just going to try to take it in on him. He's an MVP. He's great offensively. But for Alex to play that type of confidence, that aggression, just opens up so much for this team. And again, I'll stress, like it is one game. It is only one half of basketball, but it was a really good half of basketball, a really promising half of basketball. So I think the shot diet is something I like. The physicality he played with down low, even on the offensive glass. And that was another thing. Rebounding for Alex was a struggle last year. There'd be games where he'd have 30 plus minutes played and grab 2, 3, 4 rebounds, which cannot happen from your starting center. But I liked what he did on the glass. He had 8 boards in those 17 minutes, some offensive rebounds as well, got some second chance points. He looked like a center. He didn't look like, I mentioned this before, like a forward trying to cosplay as a center. He looked like a center. And that's kind of what I took from that. The Wizards can have this guy play like a center, play like he's 7 foot. It changes, obviously, the trajectory of the rebuild. And if you can have a guy like him to build around, that makes everything go. It makes everything work. So hopefully he continues that beyond just a half of preseason basketball. But for fans to be excited makes a lot of sense because he did a lot of good things.
I like how you used the word cosplay there. That was funny, Greg. I was gonna bring up the question when it comes to rebounding splits wise, Greg. Is there a certain number that you think Alex Sar should hit come year 2?
I mean, like, I feel like most centers in the league can easily hit the 8 to 10 rebound mark. I mean, you're out there for 30, 35 minutes. There's going to be misses. If you're doing your job to clean the glass, and you should be up there getting boards. And that also comes with getting stops. Like if you're not getting stops, you're fouling. You're giving up like they did last year. I think it was 120 points per game. There's not many rebounds to be had. So I think defense does play a part in that. But I think, if we get to the end of the season and he's averaging 5, 6, even 7 rebounds per game, it's like you can clearly do a lot better. It also would make me a little concerned that they're not getting enough stops. But I don't see why not. He's 7 foot. Like a guy like Jokic, there's legit quarters where he'll get 9 points, 9 assists, and 9 rebounds. Like it can be done. And so I think it's not crazy to think, Sarr should be getting 7, 8, 9, 10 rebounds every night. I don't necessarily think he should be going out there with the intention of getting a double-double. But again, like it goes hand in hand with stops. But if you had to set a number, I'd kind of put it at that mark.
It's kind of funny. You got me thinking about it as we just have this conversation here about what numbers should look like for a center. And Marvin Bagley last night certainly had the numbers you would love to see, especially out of a guy that is going to be most likely your backup center. I know in the first game, Vuk came off the bench first. I'm not sure if that really means a whole lot. He's done pretty well offensively. But Bagley, a guy that obviously they bring back after they trade him at the deadline last year. Are we going to see this same story play out again with Bagley where they actually trade him at the deadline again? Could he play at a high enough level for that to happen?
Yeah, I mean, like in an ideal world, honestly, that is the case. Like if you're the Wizards and they sign him for a vet minimum, And if you can flip him for a pick, and I don't even think he could play well enough, even if he plays like he did last night every game, I don't know if you would even get a first round pick from him. You have the injury history, obviously.
Yeah, probably
But
not.
if you can get anything for him at the deadline, then I think they would move him because you obviously have Sarr as your center of the future. Tristan has looked really solid offensively in preseason, so maybe that's a guy that you think could maybe slot in there. But again, like Marvin was awesome, and Marvin was good his first stint in DC too. And I don't think many people talked about it. Same with Rashawn Holmes. Like they were both very good players. And so obviously Marvin coming over that first time from Detroit, the Wizards made that trade just because like they got a pick. They actually got two picks back from it, but they also dumped Gallinari and they dumped Muscala. And they kind of helped. They took back additional salary. So I don't know what their whole outlook and approach with that is this year. But what do you have? 18-11. I think he had 9 points and 8 rebounds on like 4 or 5 from the field, or 6 or 7 from the field in like the first quarter last night. That's a really good backup center. You mentioned Tristan coming in first. I think that was possibly due to just like they knew Sarr wasn't playing the second half and they wanted Bagley to play a decent bit in the second half because he started last night and Tristan came off the bench. So I would assume, especially with Vukcevic being on a two-way, he has a max of 50 games on the active roster. I would assume they're going to go with Bagley as the backup, way more experienced as well. Sarr can learn from him. Tristan will kind of slot in if they need. But I'm intrigued by it. I think if you can get something for Marvin, that's a bonus. And even if you don't and you hold on to him, I think it's a 1-year vet minimum deal. I'm not mad at that. If you're going to get that type of production from somebody on a veteran minimum, let alone a veteran for Alex Sar, it's a win-win, especially if he plays like that.
Yeah, that'd be funny if the Wizards trade him again because at that point his real estate agent's doing wonders overtime for
Wait, real quick. Let's get into some final thoughts here as we get geared up for the final preseason game on Thursday against Detroit. We'll take one more break and we'll close things out here with Greg Finberg. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, I've tried player props, and I even follow along the live lines during the game. It makes watching football even more exciting than it is. You got a little something riding on the action. You can't beat that. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the same game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, as we get ready for the third and final preseason game, the vets did not play last night for the Wizards. Not really a surprise, Greg. And it wasn't a surprise that CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton were pretty obviously the two best offensive players for the Wizards the other day, and I think that's going to be evident as the season rolls along here. How important is it going to be for the Wizards to keep those guys healthy by the trade deadline?
I feel like a broken record when I say this because I've said this stat probably 50 times, but the team was 6-8 with Chris Middleton in the lineup after they traded for him last year. That's a third of their wins in 14 of the 82 games just because he was in the lineup. And it's not because he was averaging 30. His numbers, 14 a game, like they weren't off the charts, but just his presence, his impact, just I don't know what it is about him, but they play better when he's on the floor. Even in the first preseason game, again, you mentioned Ben. He didn't play against the Knicks. He only played 24 minutes against Toronto, but in those minutes, he had 11 points, 9 boards, 5 assists. He didn't miss a shot. He was 4-4 from the field and made his only 3, and he was a plus 13. Same goes for McCollum, who was the best player clearly on the floor. He was a plus 15, 19 points and 5 boards in the same amount of minutes. Like those are the guys that are going to make this team better. And I talked to my pod about this, but like you look at a team like Houston and you look at a team like even Detroit, for a couple of years of the rebuild, they had the young talent, but they weren't producing anything. And you were kind of unsure if they would ever produce any type of success. But then Houston adds Dylan Brooks and they add Fred VanVleet, even add a guy like Jeff Green, who's just on the bench as a veteran, and they're the 2 seed in the West. And Detroit last year nearly knocked off the Knicks and made the playoffs because they added guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Tobias Harris. So I'm not saying like the Wizards now with those two guys are going to have a run like those teams did. What I am saying is it's clear that those guys do help and impact winning. And it's not just a bunch of young guys running around and just trying to get better. We actually have some structure if you're the Wizards and you have guys that know how to win, how to play team basketball, how to play basketball the right way. And for the young guys to not only see that, but get to play alongside that, learn from that, I think that only helps them, especially if they play at that level. I mean, Middleton and McCollum were clearly the two best players on the floor. Honestly, either team against Toronto, just it looked effortless for them. It seems like obviously they're both 34 and they're really old and their contracts suck. We know that, but they're still good players. Just because they're old and their contracts don't equivalent to probably what they should be getting paid, that does not make them bad players. CJ McCollum is still one of the most lethal mid-range 3-level scorers we've seen. Chris Middleton can still knock down a jumper with anybody in his face. So let's not forget about that. And I think you'll just see like the impact that they have on the team is pretty clear. And if they can stay healthy, which you mentioned has not been the easiest thing, especially for Middleton, I think the team could win more games than last year. I'm not saying a play-in team. I'm not saying they're going to do anything crazy. But I do think that this is number one, the best roster they've had of the rebuild. And I think it's the best veterans they've had of the rebuild, especially considering Bagley too. So I just think if they can stay healthy, the team's going to look a lot better and play a lot better.
Yeah, you heard it here first. According to Greg Finberg, 34 is really, really old. Now, but going back, I want to talk about Will Riley, Greg, another young guy who that first game hit those clutch free throws that should have essentially ended the game. And the second game against New York, 17 points. What do you think his role is going to be here in Washington? Because going into this season, me and Ben were talking about how he's kind of be with the capital city go-go for a while. Maybe towards the second half of the season, we'll see him. But is there a possibility where he'll carve out a role come the first half?
I think it's possible. I mean, I think anything's possible. Like this team, this front office has made it clear they play their rookies. Bub led the league in minutes for a rookie last year. If George and Sarr were healthy, they would have been right up there too if they didn't miss 14, 15 games apiece. I think it's tough because it's a good thing to have for Keefe, but it's also a tough thing because you have a bunch of young guys. You obviously have McCollum, you have Bagley, you have Middleton. They're your veterans, and they're the best options there. Bagley's clearly better than Vukcevic, in my opinion. McCollum is the best 2 guard. Middleton's the best 4 on this team. They're going to play. They're going to start. Not Bagley, of course. But when you look at a guy like Riley, he showed you exactly why they drafted him against the Knicks. He obviously – a lot of people think about Keyshawn George when they think about him just because they're both 6'8", and the things that they can do, the guard skills that they have, it's just – you don't see that a lot from 6'8" guys. Will Dawkins is a type, right? I mean, Bilal can do the same thing realistically. But, I mean – Will can shoot the ball. He knocked down a 3 against the Knicks. He was 7 of 11 as well, so he did it efficiently, 17 points. There was a move that he had where he took it from the right wing across the paint, spun, and made a tough left-handed contested layup. It's those things that kind of showcase, like, he's raw. He's really skinny for a guy that's his big or his size. He has a long way to go. It's just a matter of do they trust him this early in his career to produce, especially over guys like, he's a 3 or a 4 realistically. You have Middleton, you have Whitmore, you have Keyshawn George, you have Kispert, that's a 2/3. You have Bilal when he comes back. Like, that's 5 already.
Champagny as well, Greg.
Champagny as well, who I absolutely love. And so even a guy like Champagny is in the same boat as Riley, where you have so many wings, you have so many forwards, it's just hard to find enough minutes. And Keefe's a guy that likes to play 8, 9-man rotations. He's not going to stretch it out to 10, 11. So I think early on, even though Riley's played great in preseason, I'd expect, like you mentioned, him to get some run with the go-go while they obviously trot out McCollums and Middletons and Bagleys. But maybe later in the season, if some trades are made, some guys get moved around or bought out, he should step into that role and obviously hopefully have more experience and all that stuff under his plate. But he's already showed it. He showed why the Wizards drafted him pretty early on.
So many wings, not enough ranch. I think that's really the best way you can put
I like that. I like
for
that.
For this Wizards team this year. Greg, we appreciate you coming on here as always, my friend.
Of course. Thank you guys as always. I love listening to the pod. Even better when I get to be on it and talk to you guys about the Wiz. So I appreciate both you guys.
Of course, my friend. Anytime. So check out Greg's work with Bullets Forever and also check out his podcast, The Wizards Podcast. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts, and also follow him on X at Greg Finberg. That'll do it for us today here at Locked On Wizards Nation. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. For your second, check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, where Josh Lloyd will get you geared up for the regular season. Wizards back in action on Thursday for the final preseason game, so keep it locked on, the Locked On Wizards podcast. For my co-host Abdullah Ayubi, for our guest today, Greg Finberg, I'm Ben Strober, DC family. We'll talk to you tomorrow.